And welcome everybody to day 3 of TJ Talks the News. I am TJ here with you, and we're going to be trying out Google News today, which is one that surprisingly I don't think I've ever tried. I just went to Google and I typed in news, and we get all the top stories. And we can actually go straight to Google News. Let's try out Google News. Whoa, okay. One thing I think is fascinating is how the news itself is organized on the page, where the reader's eyes are drawn to. This looks closer to Reddit than it does CNN that we looked at yesterday. It's still kind of cluttered though. There's something over on the left-hand side. I guess it's like a navigation panel to like break it down by topic and stuff. Maybe it's just that the text is so small. It does give us the weather. In fact, I just realized that you can see where I live. Hey, Google, my location services are off. You should not be able to know where I am. I love it. I was like, last night, my wife picked up dinner for us, and she was kind of on a side of town that she's not usually on, so I tried to search for restaurants nearby her. And of course, whenever I went to Google and typed in restaurants, it gave me my neighborhood. And this was on my phone, and my phone is, there's no location services, but it just goes to show that they're tracking you all the time, no matter what you do. They know everything about us. Which is scary, but it's oh so convenient when you want to purchase that camping set or that new stroller or that new phone or whatever it is. They know exactly what you want. Anyways, let's get to the news this morning, shall we? I'm gonna have to block that out just so you guys don't know where I live. You can see here though, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's gonna be like 110 degrees today. Let's see here. House lawmakers urge Biden to delay Afghanistan withdrawal till evacuation's complete. This is something I'm kind of surprised that I haven't really touched on yet. I don't think, given how big it's been in the news the past week or so. Sipping my coffee. We all saw the images of people storming the airports and falling off of the planes and stuff. It really is kind of eerie and is more evidence to the idea that we are living in a simulation, just that you have the images of 9/11 with the people jumping off the buildings and then the images of the people jumping off the planes. And it's like these bookends to this era in American geopolitics that hopefully we don't forget, but it sure seems like a lot of people have forgotten everything besides the last week. We're so reactionary nowadays, says the guy who is just reacting to headlines in a YouTube social media vlog thing. But we really are, man. We're so reactionary. And it's like everybody's begging for us to get out of this war. And so Biden's like, okay, let's get out of this war. And then he does. And everybody's like, no, we didn't want to do it. At least we didn't want to do it that way. It's been kind of scary, just the sheer amount of just outright propaganda, misinformation, uncontextualized reporting that I've witnessed the last week. It is absolutely insane. I don't think I've ever seen a concerted effort as much as I have this past week when it comes to trying to shape America's opinion about something. And I don't know, maybe I'm imagining it all, and maybe it's just about getting the clicks. Maybe it was just that the images were so powerful that the media just had to jump on this opportunity to crap all over Biden. And look, I think that basically everybody fucked up here. Trump, of course, is the one who signed the treaty. The day the treaty was signed, we should have started evacuating people. We should have had plans in place. Of course, as we've discovered, there were problems. Well, let's just say the Trump administration was not very open to things like immigration and stuff, and the processing of visas. But even then, Biden has been in office now for many months, and I am not an expert in geopolitics. I am not on the ground over there. I have no idea what's happening. So all I can tell you is from my perspective over here, as somebody who has kind of tuned out the war for the last 10 years at least, Um, it seems like, well, why didn't we have like people evacuating like day one? Biden's in office. You know that Trump is not going to be handling this well, so why not get on top of it? And I don't know. It seems like some people chose to stay there for business reasons or for whatever reasons. Um, yeah, a lot. It seems like a lot of the Afghans who helped the U.S. are may not be able to get out. Um, so the withdrawal itself seems like it was poorly planned. I think it's still too early to kind of say too much. As far as I know, loss of life has been minimal. I don't think I've seen any news stories about Americans dying. That doesn't mean it's not happening. Um, it's I don't know. Maybe the withdrawal isn't going as bad as we think it is, and this is just you know media trying to get their last little bit of war coverage in. Uh, but maybe it is going bad. And as we can see here in these headlines, they're talking about extending the withdrawal to ensure that they can get everybody out. And again, my question is, well, why didn't we do this earlier? It seems like we should have been doing it earlier. But again, I don't know enough to really come to too strong of conclusions. Besides the fact that simply from an optics standpoint, this is not a good look for Biden, at least in the short term. I think in the long term it will be. Um, Again, I think it's like everybody forgot how opposed to the war Americans are. They're showing some polling that's like Americans want to get back into the war or something, which I could totally see happening. If Biden loses, assuming we even have elections, but if Biden loses, um, you know, I could even see Biden getting us involved in another war in the Middle East. But just man, what a giant fucking just a giant mess, man. I think the saddest part for me is probably um and probably why we're going to see a lot of the coverage of this stuff die down. I had my first class that I taught. It's been a year and a half since I was in a classroom. I did some online classes. Then enrollment went down and I was unemployed for a while. Now I'm back in the classroom teaching again. And one thing that I often do in class is bring up the news and stuff. Especially because in my class, the students have to choose their own topics. I used to it's like, okay, I'm going to have you all read about my own interests and write about my own interests and try to force you to get interested in the things that I'm interested in, but I don't do that anymore. So I let students choose their own topics to read and write about. And so it's a lot of brainstorming early on in the semester to choose a topic. And we kind of started that process yesterday. And nobody mentioned Afghanistan. Not a single person. And I bet the vast majority of Americans, besides the images that they may have seen last week, I bet most of them have even forgotten about those by now. And the one thing that was very popular in my class as far as topics go was one woman phrased it as medical freedom, the freedom to not take a vaccine. And then another man just said, an older man just said, yeah, let's talk about the COVID vaccine. What the hell is the COVID vaccine anyways? And as a teacher, those kinds of moments are always a struggle. And I'm not sure if I want to. I don't like censorship. I've always been, like, a lot of teachers will tell students, like, don't write about abortion or don't write about the death penalty because these are overdone topics and there's no good solution. And no, I want the student. I want the student to discover for themselves how complex and nuanced the issue actually is. Because a lot of the students who want to write about things like abortion or vaccines or whatever have very strong, very biased, preconceived ideas about the topic. And so having them explore it might actually be a good thing for them. But man, the vaccine, I don't know. Especially with some of the videos that we're seeing with like parents threatening teachers and stuff. It's a little scary as a teacher to have that kind of on the contours of the classroom, the kind of outside world bleeding into into your curriculum and potentially disrupting the classroom as well. Uh, but yeah, no, my daughter told me we have to memorize a poem because she's just started kindergarten. We have to memorize a poem for school. And I said, oh, that's lovely. What's the poem? And of course, it's the Pledge of Allegiance, right? So I asked her, did they tell you why you're saying this Pledge of Allegiance? And she just kind of stared at me blankly, because of course they didn't. Of course they didn't. And I was raised in a family. We had, a copy of the Constitution hanging in the living room. My dad also had a painting of Thomas Jefferson, which, looking back, was maybe not the best idea, especially for his black students. Look at this. My teacher has a painting of a slave owner in his living room. But we revere the Constitution in my family and American government, and just the idea of government and of democracy and of civic virtue and what it means to be a citizen in a democracy. And fuck, man, I don't think we're probably like the only family who does that, Just and I'm not talking about like blind patriotism or nationalism or anything like that, but just the idea of civic virtue. People don't seem to even have that concept now. My dad says it's always about freedoms and responsibilities, and it seems like Americans have completely forgotten about the idea of responsibilities as members of a democracy. You can't have your freedoms unless you take care of your responsibilities first. Anyways, more than half of Florida students now go to schools mandating masks in defiance of DeSantis. So it seems like the local communities are winning out in this state local government battle, which is actually fairly unusual. I mean, the states do have the power here, but I'm guessing that because the law that DeSantis passed with the banning of the mask mandates is unconstitutional to begin with and is going to lead to all kinds of lawsuits, that they're just not going to fight it. I don't know. DeSantis seems pretty stubborn. I mean, really what DeSantis is doing is he's trying to build his profile for 2024, right? So everything that he's done, from the critical race theory to the masks, all of it is designed to basically target liberal rage, to get people upset about these things. He knows they're terrible laws that are never going to stand up in court. The idea is to just get people upset so that he gets the media coverage. And the Republican platform these days seems to be who can piss off Democrats the most. And so that's DeSantis' whole strategy right now, and it is working so well. Every time I see somebody blow up about DeSantis, I'm just like, you're falling right into his trap there, guy. This is how we ended up with Trump. Just ignore him, But I don't know. Maybe ignoring him is just as bad or even worse. It's kind of a it's a tough situation there. Apathetic voters could hand California recall to Republicans. Folks seem unaware. I saw this earlier, and I just love how this frames the story and how it blames the voters for Newsom's loss or potential loss here, rather than blaming Newsom or the Democratic Party for poor turnout. No, it's the voters' fault. I mean, isn't it their job to inspire the voters? If the voters don't turn out, isn't it their fault that they're not turning out? Then again, I was just talking about how nobody seems to have any concept of civic virtue all the time. So we all share some of the blame, I think. I just don't like the way that this story frames the recall election, though. I mean, the Democrats' message at this point basically seems to be, don't vote, vote for no on the recall because we don't want a Republican, which honestly is a really good argument at this point. But clearly it's not good enough to motivate people. And I think especially with Democrats having a supermajority, and they've had the supermajority for so long, and while California is in a very strong position, I think as a state, our economy is doing well and stuff, I feel like they could do a lot more to deliver on some of those core Democratic policies, things like universal daycare. They're working on the free community college stuff, but why not just free college altogether? Students of any background should be able to choose any college they want to go to, regardless of whether they can pay for it or not. Um, so, I don't know. I can understand why some people would be upset. Is it enough to be upset not, to allow a Republican to get into the office? Maybe. I don't know. He's only going to be in office for a year. Although if, what's her name? Feinstein dies, then he'll get to appoint the next senator, I think. So that should be interesting. Kamala Harris visits John McCain monument in Vietnam 3 years after his death. And underneath that, there's a sub-headline saying possible Havana Syndrome incident delayed Harris flight to Vietnam. This is actually really interesting. I've always been fascinated in conspiracy theories and aliens and all of that kind of stuff. I never fell too deep into the rabbit hole. I love it when students get interested in these things and decide to explore them. It makes for a really fascinating topic. I'm less interested in the conspiracies themselves and more in the psychology behind them, or in the social historical factors that lead to the creation of the conspiracy theory and the flourishing of a conspiracy theory and stuff. I'm not saying that this is a conspiracy theory. As far as we know, this Havana Syndrome thing, if you haven't heard about it, it's this mysterious illness that seems to affect various people, various officials throughout the world, but a lot of American diplomats and stuff who are visiting places. It's called the Havana Syndrome because I think one of the first recorded instances took place in Havana, Cuba. And basically what happens is, and honestly, when I hear this, I'm just like, what? But basically what happens is the people start to experience, just out of nowhere, odd symptoms like nausea and lightheadedness and headaches and these kinds of things. And when I read that, I'm like, okay, don't we all experience that sometimes? Like, because we get hot or we get stressed or we haven't eaten. Like, it just seems like some pretty typical stuff. But maybe I just don't know enough about the symptoms or their severity or how it's happening to really understand, because it doesn't seem like that big of a deal to me. There are some theories about what it is, like a microwave weapon or a sound wave weapon, basically something that people can target. It's not going to be lethal, but it may cause, these types of issues. I think they've done brain scans on some of the people, and it's not just like a few. They've had hundreds of instances of this happening across the globe. And we do have records of these types of weapons going back, I think, to like the 70s. It's pretty interesting. John McCain is such a fascinating character. Going back to 2008 and his run for the presidency and his choosing Sarah Palin. But the one thing that always stands out to me is during that town hall that he had, where one of the people asking a questions like called Obama a Muslim or something like that. And McCain actually had to correct her and basically told her she's wrong. And that he lost her vote that night. He lost probably a lot of people's vote that night. And I think that may be one of the last times we see that from a Republican. I'm not sure. Romney, I think, is kind of trying to carry that torch, but yeah. GOP leader says Biden's spending bills will pass over my dead body, but can't say how he'll stop them. Maybe with his dead body? I don't know. Yeah, so the House just passed a resolution to allow for the $3.5 trillion budget to go through. They also have the infrastructure package going through. There are some threats from House moderates who are threatening to stall it unless they get what they want, but I don't think it's... Yeah, these things are going to pass. Honestly, the whole thing has just been really weird to me. This two-pronged approach with the two separate bills. And I know it's really just politics and really just people playing games and about satisfying Manchin and Sinema's ego and a few of the other more moderate Senate Democrats. But boy, I think it's made them look absolutely ridiculous as a political party. I think it's just, and the amount of time they've wasted. The fact that they can pass the reconciliation bill, I think, makes the entire infrastructure bill pointless. They should have just gone with the reconciliation bill. Just put everything in it. Again, this is about satisfying those moderates. But boy, I think they did a lot of damage to themselves over these past 8 months, 9 months or so as they've been negotiating these things. But if they do get them passed, it'll probably be a good thing come midterms. Let's see here. Former California Democratic Majority Leader endorses Larry Elder in campaign against Governor Newsom. So that's the guy who may actually end up winning the California governor's election. Larry Elder, he's a talk radio host, I think. I don't really know much about him. He could be my next governor, though. Lots and lots of California news, and I'm guessing again it's because Google's spying on us. Fucking Google, man. My hope was that going to Google would give me a broad range of stuff, but of course not. Even though I'm in incognito mode with location services turned off, of course not. Oh, lovely. Look how they push these. So this is like on a little side thing that says spotlight, and there's a story that says the vaccinated are worried and scientists don't have the answers. And then there's like a picture of like a microscopic version of the virus. Boy, man, they're really trying to appeal to that sense of fear, aren't they? Wow. And this is on Google too. It says it's a Bloomberg story, but just the clickbait and how this is feeding into all this stuff going on right now. How you could be at Bloomberg and not see yourself as responsible for people dying right now? I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's see here. Where America lost in game population could help Democrats in redistricting. And one of you brought this up in the first episode that, despite everything that's going on, the demographics are in the Democrats' favor, which is why we see them panicking and wanting to pass, all these voting restrictions and stuff, because it's going to be the only way that they can win in the future. We're seeing basically the white population in America decline, while basically immigration is the only source of population growth in America. And our population, the native population growth has been stagnant for a while now. And so immigrants provide all of our population growth, basically. Now, I think one of the assumptions there is that immigrants are going to vote Democrat, which I think is a terrible assumption to make. Perhaps historically that's the case, although it's not always the case, and it depends on the immigrant group. So yeah, and especially we saw Republicans make some gains with non-white voters, particularly Hispanic voters in Florida, which they have the Cuban population there, right? And they traditionally vote Republican, but they still saw gains among other populations. So I think that should be worrisome. And honestly, because I work with a lot of young Hispanic males, and I've talked to them about this, because overwhelmingly they are Trump supporters, and they're not Republicans, and they're not politically active. They're just Trump supporters. And it's this kind of cult of personality that he's developed. And I've talked to them about this, like, what is it about him? Because I do the news every day in class, and I remember this was 2 years ago maybe, and I remember I was going over and some of it was negative about Trump, and one of these guys kind of got in my, like, where do you find all this crap anyways? And I listed off like all the news sources that I go to, because I don't just get my news from one place, and that kind of shut him up at one point, but not really, because they don't ever shut up. But anyways, I've talked to them about this, and you know what the biggest pull for them seems to be? Conspiracy theories. That Trump kind of plays into a lot of these things and kind of, leads people that he himself seems to buy into a lot of these conspiracy theories is what seems to make him popular with them. And again, it's just young men and their obsession with conspiracy theories. I don't know what that is. I think it's fascinating. Maybe it's about a sense of powerlessness, and the conspiracy theory helps you to regain a sense of power over a world that you feel is too complex for you to really fit into. I don't know. But it's that, and then it's also the machismo. They like the kind of tough man image of it, um, which is interesting. Uh, I've heard it said that Trump is a weak man's idea of a tough man. I think is how the saying goes, something like that. Let's see here. China is now blaming the U.S. for the COVID-19. Interesting. There's still so again. I don't know. When Trump was in office, and there were these ideas about COVID being a manufactured virus coming out. It was basically like, no, absolutely not. Trump is insane. This is all just racism and stuff. And then Biden gets into office, and it's kind of like, okay, well, that may be a possibility. I don't know why that bothers me so much. I think it's because of how absolute people were in their denial of it. And again, the data, the evidence suggested that yes, this is a natural disease. It was not created in a lab anywhere. Um, that's what the evidence suggests, but it's not 100%, right? And I wish we could always include a bit more skepticism in the claims that we make, particularly with something like this. Um, but they've now, Biden it says Biden has received an inconclusive intelligence report on COVID origins because we're likely never ever gonna really know. Um, I feel like that absolute denial early on is really going to be more fuel to the conspiracy flames. Um, so I don't know. I wish everybody could just be a little less committed to their beliefs about the world, and a little more skeptical of their own perspective. Of course, that doesn't play well when you gotta get votes and stuff, right? Now we're getting to the world news. Biden risks ugliest Afghanistan exit if he blows past August 31st. Well, we'll have to wait and see. I guess we're just repeating the same news stories now. I kind of feel bad for Haiti. If you didn't know, there was another massive earthquake in Haiti. The death count I think is into the thousands now, and this crisis has kind of been overshadowed by the quote unquote crisis in Afghanistan, if we can call it that. Again, I don't know if I haven't seen if there's been a lot of deaths or what if it's just all a lot of media stuff. Um, but it really has been overshadowed by that, and then of course by all the COVID stuff happening as well. Um, so Haiti needs some help. If you're somebody who likes to give to charity or something, that's definitely something to look into. Business. Delta Airlines is raising health insurance premiums for unvaccinated employees by $200 a month to cover higher COVID costs. And this is basically what everybody was waiting for, is that as soon as the vaccine got the FDA approval, you're going to start seeing all kinds of vaccine mandates, predominantly from the private sector, because the public sector was already getting these mandates in place. But we'll probably see even more of that happening. Companies making their employees get it. Also, insurance companies refusing to cover patients who are not vaccinated. It's interesting. I hate the idea of relying on a private company to do the dirty work. I guess if it works, right? I don't know, because they could just as easily not do that, right? And some companies are. I don't think those companies will be around for very long, but you have that one restaurant where like you have to be unvaccinated to eat at the restaurant and stuff. Johnson & Johnson booster shot prompts large increase in immune response, company says. Very cool. I got the Pfizer vaccine. That's the one that I got. Pfizer's FDA approval could open floodgates for corporate vaccine mandates. That's what we were just talking about. Biden's cybersecurity summit will gather very important people to solve America's hacking problem. I don't know why I dislike that headline so much. I think it's that phrase, very important people. Who wrote that? Who is it? This is CNBC. Okay, that makes sense. We really have had a lot of issues though with cybersecurity lately, right? From the pipeline that was shut down to oh, there was something, wasn't there like an energy grid or something that was shut down, and just all kinds of things. The State Department was hacked recently, and honestly, this is I'm kind of surprised it didn't start earlier. I mean, you go back to the movie Hackers, right? I mean, we know that this era of kind of computer digital internet terrorism was coming. Um, Too bad it's not being used for good like it is in the movie. I know I saw somebody say, like, some hackers, please cancel all the student debts and all the mortgages and all this stuff. But which, if you want a show that does that, it's Mr. Robot. I think is a show that kind of touches on this idea of um, you know digital terrorism or whatever we call it. But it's going to be interesting to see how this progresses and how we counteract it, and how it changes warfare moving forward. I think it already has changed warfare. To a large degree, I would say that the Russians and the U.S. and basically us and all the other major global powers are in this kind of soft digital war right now, with all the hacking and spying and sabotage and stuff going on, influencing of elections. It's kind of scary, but it's also really cool and exciting. I tend to have that response to things. It's like, oh, that's fucking terrifying, and I hate it, but it's also really cool, and I want more of it, and I want to learn more about it. All right, well, I think we have probably surpassed our allotted time for the day. That's going to be it from me for today, August 25th, 2021. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you tomorrow.